Everybody, welcome back to the Yoeitz podcast. We continue with the Pele Yoeitz. We're on page 126 in the art scroll, day 40 of Hachzik. We get a new ois of chanufa, which means flattery. Just to read the introduction over here, it's important. At the foundation of a life of Torah and Ruchnius lies a firm belief in Hashem and His providence. Flattery is an attitude that runs counter to bitachon. This is very important. This definitely treads the same lines of bitachon. When one flatters someone, chanufa, for the wrong purposes, that runs counter to bitachon, and it is evil at the core. Furthermore, when a person falsifies himself to act differently than the way he truly feels, this opens tremendous opportunity for evil to fester inside of him. So this is going to be a very interesting chapter over here, learning about chanufa. That not only the Svarim, the Shar B'tachon very much talks about chanufa, and the Beis Halevi we learned in the past talks about chanufa, but as we're going to see, the reason why chanufa is such an evil, rotten midah is because, first of all, it goes against bitachon, which is really the most fundamental reason. You're flattering someone who's not in line with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that in itself is a breach in your relationship with Hashem. The oid, that when you act not your true self, when you're not true to your values, true to your core, and there's a false representation of yourself and your values and your true feelings of something, then that's evil. It's not being yourself, it's not being true to yourself, which ultimately brings is the spiral to more evil. Avera gares avera, as we're going to see. So let's see what the Pele Yoeitz has to say about this. Chanufa, Gedol Ra'asam Mefarish B'Divrei B'Seinu Zal B'Shas Midrashim. The great evils of chanufa are very much detailed in Shas and Midrashim. V'asif Hishtar Marina Reb Chaim Vital Zichron Levracha B'Sefer Kadosh HaKedusha Mir Ish HaYoreh Yoeitz Asif B'Kesher Ametz. Chaim Vital writes in his Sefer Shar Kedusha, he goes into great detail, but says the Pele Yoeitz, V'amnam tzarich levar ma'u chanufa. Before going into the evils and the bad aspects of chanufa, we have to understand, put up the guidelines, the boundaries of what exactly is the definition of flattery. Ki yesh davar she'eino chanufa, for the things that are not part of the isser of chanufa. V'yesh chasrei mada shechosh she'ein chanufa. And there are those that don't realize that something is chanufa, and really it is chanufa. So, when one shows honor to a wealthy person, these fools deem him flattery. So one shows wealth, when one shows honor to a very wealthy person, or one who shows contempt to a poor person, who mishal b'helusay. So the Pele Yoeitz writes, very interesting, very poetic way of writing. Such a man congratulates himself in his own foolishness. Who mishal behoyle lusay, but amar shu eno yedel hachnef ve'im b'fir nechinay. Kiroi v'hogan lechaber es Hashem shakim etzinu b'Rabbeinu Hakadosh shoy mechaber es Hashem v'Rabbi Kiva gam hima mechaber Hashem. So it says the Pele Yoeitz. Now the Pele Yoeitz is going to get into the boundaries of where one can make the wrong boundaries for chanufa. When one shows says the Pele Yoeitz, a person can think that people that are mechaber ashirim, that they applaud them, that they are mechaber them, that they respect them, that automatically they're crossed off, that they are over on the isser of chanufa. But says the Pele Yoeitz, that's very much not true. Who mishal behelusay, such a person congratulates himself on his own foolishness. It's a very foolish thing to say that if you're mechaber and usher, that automatically you're crossed off, you're written off, that you're over on the isser. Why? We see in Shas, the Gemara talks about different Amoraim, Tanaim, that they were mechaber Hashem. And the reason that the wealthy are deserving of honor is because if Hashem is being mechaber them, Hashem is putting them in a position where they have affluence, they have wealth, and they're able to help other people, and they're good bank tellers for Kadosh Baruch Hu, then we have to follow suit. We have to go on Hashem's way. So if Hashem is setting them up in such a way, then we have to recognize that and give them the proper covet. If Hashem showered him with an abundance of bracha from above, we have to afford him the same honor. And for sure, if we were the beneficiary, we received his kindness, this gvir, this usher's kindness, for sure we have to be mechabed him and respect him. So the Pele is driving that we can't just cross someone off saying, oh, he's mechabed Hashirim, he's mechabed them, he honors them, he welcomes them into his house, or if it's a gadol, and there's this false notion, these gedolim, these talmid chacham, they're going to the rich people's houses. No, they're going with the Pele Yoeitz. Pele Yoeitz is bringing down the Tanoim and the Amoraim that they would be mechabed Hashirim, and the reason is it's very intuitive, it's very logical. If Hashem chose them, Hashem gave them the honor of being his bank tellers. Hashem wants them and put them in a position to dispense the Yoeitz Shel Tov, where all the money comes from, to give tzedakah, to help communities, to help build shuls and kolim and build Torah and Klal Yisrael, then it's roi, it's befitting for those that are the front lines, the Tamid Chacham, the Gedolei Hadar, the Tzadikim, that they should be mechabed them too. It's not a scam, it's not some type of scheme, it's not some type of dancing at two chasans. No, this is the way it's supposed to be, and it's brought down in Shas, and it's also logical that Hashem is being mechabed them, then they too also have to be mechabed them. So that's a very important thing, especially in the world we live in, with the Adirei Torah and the Kerem Olam Torah, and we see that the tzadikim and the Gedolei Hadar and the Rosh Yeshivas, they're being mechabed Hashirim. It's beferish. It's a Gemara in Eruvin. Rabbeinu Hakadosh mechabed es Hashirim, v'Rabbi Akiva gam heim hay mechabed Hashirim. Rabbeinu Hakadosh, are we greater than them? And they were mechabed the Hashirim, and Rabbi Akiva was mechabed Hashirim. And what's the underlying factor? What's the reason? It's because Hakadosh Baruch Hu himself is being mechabed them. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is giving them this opportunity. So if Hashem is being mechabed them, then certainly we have to be mechabed them. That's number one. V'oid shamarbe nechasim mistam marbe lasas mitzvos u'maisim tovim yoser machirim v'chatav b'tzedakah yifreik v'roi lachash ksas hakovedei afim maso shalei kahegin v'yatzik ksas min ashur in zazel kol kach b'chvedei. If they have so much money, then probably they're doing their mitzvahs on a higher level, better than other people. And also, if says the Pele Yoeitz, if we see that there's any deviation from the path and they do something that's out of line, we shouldn't be mezalzel and is covered. Again, everything is quoted in Shas. We find in the Gemara, if you were not toidus, we should decree chayrim on you, which means upershu sham shahaya mato malay lechisin shalim yidachamim. Chazal explained there that Toidus was worthy of being of respect because he would put merchandise into the purses of Talmidei Chachamim, enabling them to support themselves honorably. So what the Pele Yoeitz is saying is that even though he veered and he did things that weren't necessarily in line perfectly, but nevertheless, because he was Mechabed Talmidei Chachamim, there's a tremendous respect, there's kavod, there's honor that we have to give such people. And again, this goes back to the point that being Mechabed Ashirim, for people to say, oh, why be mechabed them? They live certain type of lifestyles and this and that. It's not for us to judge. If Hashem is mechabed them, we have to be mechabed them. And especially if we are beneficiaries of their kindness, if they're supporting Torah, they're supporting organizations, they're supporting Klal Yisrael, then we also, as recipients of their kindness, have to follow suit. So that's not chanufa. Saying, oh, he's mechabed Hashem, that's not chanufa. So what is chanufa? True flattery is in two forms. The first we'll mention is evil, but the second one is even more severe. The first form of flattery is when one shows favor and great affection to another person, but his words and his heart do not align. Rather, with his mouth one speaks peace, but inside he prepares for ambush. But and even if they're not, he doesn't dislike him and he doesn't seek to hurt him. But if you show any sort of affection greater than what really resides in your heart, so it means you like a certain guy, you're okay with a certain person, but you go and you start wow, you're the best person in the world, and you're so great, and you can make a guy feel good. But if you go overboard, hu nichshel bava in chanufa, you're being over in chanufa. Why? Because this form of flattery, this is the spitz, this is the epitome of sheker. So now the question we have to understand here is that there's an element of v'ahavta kamecha, which means love your friend like you want to be loved. So if a person goes and he's all excited and exuberant and very lively and fruity about his friend, he says, "Oh, good morning, you're the best person." So what's the problem? So you're just treating a guy really nicely. What's the issue? So there's a beautiful pshat over here that's kedai to read. This form of flattery is the epitome of falsehood, meaning chanufa isn't necessarily a davar b'fnei atzma. It's not a new beria. It's a cousin, it's a brother, it's a relative of sheker. As we know, midvar sheker terchak. When a person retains the ability to feel differently toward others than what his actions imply, he cultivates the ability to live with falsehood inside of him. No longer will he deem it necessary to refine himself until he feels the pain of others and to share their burden. No longer will he be able to understand the closeness that one Jew should feel toward another or truly internalize loving his fellow as himself. This is a terrible contradiction to the way the Torah wishes us to feel and act. The Torah wants us to be emistic. The Torah wants us to be yashar. The Torah wants us to be truthful. And if we act, if we do things that are out of line of our truth, of our core, then we're festering sheker. And if we're sheker dika people, then we're not going to be able to really be mechabed and to really act with bin adam chaveroi. And we're not going to be able to really be noisabal chaver. We're not going to be able to be v'haflecha kamecha. So it's a very deep thing over here. The reason, the problem, the dangerous weapon of chanufa is that while at first glance it might seem, oh, he's flattering him, he's being so nice to him, he's recognizing him on such a high level, he's giving him hugs and kisses, wow, he's so nice. No. Because if it's not in line, if it's not emisdik, then eventually you're going to be completely out of touch with anything and everything. And when it comes really the time where your friend needs you, when it comes really the time where you need to be there for others, you're not going to be able to be there because you're so out of touch of the truth, and everything's going to be jaded, distorted, and then you're not going to be able to be truly a person who is acting in the way of Hashem. Because Hashem is Yashar, the Torah is Emes, it's clear, it's straight. And if a person acts with Chanufa, which is out of whack, which is extreme, then he's not acting in the Derech HaTorah. Very interesting. So that's the first form of flattery, which we just saw over here. And it concludes the Pele Yoeitz. But there's a very important distinction to be made over here, that when it comes to Shalom Bayis, this does not count. Because the Chazal let us do whatever we can to promote, to perpetuate more peace and more harmony in the home. And the same thing is for a Rebbe to Talmud when it comes to teaching Torah. And one must also, even when it comes to Rishon, the Gemara in Sotah tells us, you're allowed to flatter them in order to keep peace. What we see over here is that honoring tzaddikim, honoring ashirim, the Torah encourages that. Tzaddikim, Gedolim, Rosh Yeshivas, they should be honoring them because Hashem is honoring them with that. And we learned that the first level of Chanufa is when a person acts out of line with the Torah, when a person acts to an extreme, even though it might seem nice, it might seem delightful, but if it's not emes with who he is and his true relationship, his true feelings of another person, he's living falsely. And when you're living falsely, you can't live Torah-dik. I think there's an incredible story that should be mentioned over here with this relationship of Gevirim, of rich people, and Torah, and how the two coincide. So we said over here is that even a tzaddik or Rosh Yeshiva, Talmid Chacham should be mechabed ashirim, especially when they derive benefit from them. But I think it's kedai to mention the story that depicts this nekuda of being so strongly committed to Torah and being mechabed a tzaddik, being mechabed an usher, but at the same time not bending on one's values and one's commitment to Torah. So what happened was, This story was brought down in, about Reb David Feinstein, in the art school Reb David Feinstein biography. There was a big philanthropist, wealthy usher, that came to Reb David Feinstein, and he wanted him to attend this great event that the yeshiva was going to host. It was going to be a big Hachnasa Sefer Torah. It was going to be in out of the country. And this wealthy businessman approached Reb David, and he said, I really want you to be at the Hachnasa Sefer Torah. It would be a tremendous kavod, and it would really just raise the whole level. It would bring a tremendous ruach for this tremendous event, Hachnasa Sefer Torah. And the man continued, he said, not only am I going to pay you for your ticket and for obviously first class so you can learn B'menuchas and Nefesh on the plane and be able to rest up, but he said, I'm even going to give you $50,000 for whatever clothes you want. I don't know about you, but most people, I think, at least myself, if you're offering to pay for a first class ticket and $50,000, I don't care what's going on, we'll put everything aside and we'll jump right in. Attending Hachnasa Sefer Torah, everything paid for, and $50,000. I can keep it for myself. I can give it to tzedakah. I can do whatever I want. $50,000. But you know what the Gadol's response was? You know what Reb David Feinstein, the Rosh Hashiva, you know what his outlook was? You know what his life was about? This is something that doesn't come overnight. This is something that most people can attain in a lifetime. His response was, my friend, I'm sorry. I appreciate the offer, but I think you should find someone else. I said, why? So understand, everything's paid for, everything's good, $50,000. He said, I have chavrusas, I have sdarim, and no money in the world is going to take me away from that. That was his answer, and he didn't attend. What we see from here is that yes, be mechaber ashirim, have a good relationships with them, being thankful and gracious, of course. But this Maisa just highlights the commitment to Torah, unwavering, ironclad, locked in, nothing else mattered. For David, it was all about Torah. All the money in the world, jump in the lake, it had no significance. Zero. Torah, Sdarim, Chavrusas, he realized he didn't just preach, he didn't just teach his Talmidim, he lived Kihem Chayenu V'Oirech Yameinu. V'Gisa B'Yomim V'Layla literally means this is my life, this is my energy, this is my food, this is my everything, and no money in the world can compensate, can overtake that, because there's one way I'm living, and that's Torah Hagdosha and nothing else. Not $50,000, not $100,000, Torah, Torah, and Torah.